In this video, I'm going to be guiding you on how to get full marks for Paper 1 for IGCSE Business 0264. Here is the breakdown per question for Paper 1. Please note that I have color-coded all of my answers for the rest of this video. Yellow is for knowledge, blue is for application, green is for analysis, and orange is for evaluation. As there are 6 marks going for application for each question, the case study is increasingly more important. For question A, there are only 2 knowledge marks available, and these are typically defined questions. For question A, define factors of production, and the answer is resources that a business requires to produce goods and services. As you can see, there are 2 parts to this definition. The resources that a business requires, which is 1 mark, to produce goods and services, which is the 2nd mark. And here is the mark scheme for it. And the 2 knowledge marks are given for clear understanding. For question B, there are 2 knowledge marks and 2 application marks available here. And the allocation is as follows. You get 1 knowledge and 1 application marks per way. And question B is, outline 2 ways the appreciation of country X's exchange rate might affect TGD when exporting its products. Way 1. Primary sector businesses will experience less exports. As primary sector businesses is part of the case study, this is 1 application mark, and less exports is a knowledge mark. And for way 2, TGD may have to find a new market, which is our knowledge mark, for its gold, which is our application mark. Here is a top tip for the application marks. The business and the business owners' names, although you are allowed to use them in your answers, they will not be awarded marks. And if the application is in the question, in this case, country X, you will not be awarded application marks, even though it is shown in the case study. And another tip is that you can use the same application for question B, C, and D, as long as your application isn't in the question. And here's the mark scheme. And as you can see, I have used gold and primary sector business. For question C, there are 2 knowledge, 2 application, and 2 analysis marks allocated. And these will be split between way 1 and way 2. This question says, explain 2 ways TGD's business activities might negatively affect the environment. And for way 1, the knowledge point is air pollution. This is caused by the primary sector activities by TGD, which can damage the overall health of the local community, which may lead to future health problems. As you can see here, highlighted in the blue, primary sector activities, again, which is my application point. And the analysis is the direct impact of air pollution, and in this case, which is to damage the overall health of the community, which will lead to future health problems. Remember, the important part is the direct impact. And for way 2, the depletion of natural resources, which is our 2nd knowledge point. This means that there will be less resources available which will not be available for other purposes as TGD continues to dig for gold. As you can see, the application is gold, yet again highlighted in blue. And for the analysis, this is the direct impact of depletion of natural resources, which means that resources will not be available for other purposes. And this is the mark scheme. As you can see, gold and the primary sector businesses. And lastly, question D. And the allocation is as follows. 2 knowledge marks, 2 application marks, 2 analysis marks, and 2 evaluation marks. And you can see in this question here, it says, do you think the advantages to HLC of horizontal integration are greater than the disadvantages? So it's asking you for the advantages and the disadvantages. Meaning there is 1 knowledge, application, and analysis mark for each advantage and disadvantage. The advantage of technology will reduce the number of employees, which is our 1st knowledge mark, Required to work at TGD. This means that they will save money on labor costs, which will increase their working capital and profit margins for their gold mines. As you can see, there is a direct impact of the reduction of number of employees, which is to save money on labor costs and increase working capital and profit margins. And the application here is gold, which I'm sure you can tell that we have used 3 times already. The disadvantage of technology is that it may cause significant demotivation within the company, as its current 3,000 employees' jobs may be at risk. This will lead to absenteeism, which causes inefficiencies at TGD by disrupting workflows and project timelines. And here we have our knowledge point, which is demotivation, and the direct impact of demotivation is absenteeism, which causes inefficiencies and disrupting workflows. And here I have chosen 3,000 employees as my application, as it is in the case study. And for the justification, I think the advantages of technology outweighs the disadvantages, as TGD can use new technology to automate its production, which will lead to greater output. In order to get the first evaluation point, you need to justify why your selected choice is the best. So in this case, technology allows the business to automate production, which will lead to greater output. Now, the second evaluation point is a bit trickier. You need to justify why it outweighs the other choice. In this case, the other choice here is a disadvantage of technology, which is demotivation. But this answer here addresses that and says the increase in output would expand the business, which produces more jobs. And this has justified that the advantages of technology is greater than the disadvantage. And here is the mark scheme. As you can see, for application, I've used yet again gold and 3,000 employees. And again, here's a paper 1 summary. For question A, 2 knowledge points. For question B, 2 knowledge and 2 application. Question C, 2 knowledge, 2 application, and 2 analysis. And question D, 2 knowledge, 2 application, 2 analysis, and 2 evaluation. Now, I'm pretty sure that you are more interested in the 8-mark questions, so I've got a few more with model answers. Here is the case study, and the application I will use is advertise and nursery. The question is, explain 2 factors Oscar should consider when deciding on a suitable source of finance for his business. Which factor is most likely to be the most important? Justify your answer. Factor 1, the cost of financing, which is our first knowledge point. If the cost is high, this means that this will cost Oscar more money, which increases expenses. This will lead to less money available on other business operations. For the application, I have chosen advertising. And for the analysis, the direct impact of the cost of financing is that expenses will increase. Factor 2, the length of the loan. If the nursery is purchasing non-current assets, Oscar will require a long-term loan, as these assets are usually high in value, which require a longer time to pay back. Again, the knowledge is the length of the loan, the application is the nursery, and the direct impact is that it takes a longer time to pay back. And for the justification, for our first evaluation mark, is that the most important factor is the cost of financing, as this is because the loan will remain regardless of the financial performance of Oscar's business, which can negatively affect his working capital. So now for the second evaluation, I need to justify why the cost of financing is more important than the length of loan. So in here, I've said the length of the loan is not as important, as it only changes the timing of the repayments, but the high cost of financing will cause cash shortages regardless of the duration. And here's the mark scheme. As you can see here again, for the application, I have chosen nursery and advertise. And here's the case study for the next question. Here, I've highlighted chocolate and 80 employees. Do you think the advantages to HLC of horizontal integration are greater than the disadvantages? justify your answer. Integration can provide HLC with a larger customer base. With a larger quantity of consumers, this will increase its revenue from selling chocolate. As you can see, our first knowledge point is larger consumer base, the application is chocolate, and the analysis is the direct impact of a larger consumer base, which will increase revenue and quantity of consumers. However, the other business may have different ways of working, knowledge point, which would demotivate analysis HLC's 80 employees at the factory. And this is our application point. Now moving on to the justification. The disadvantage is greater because demotivated employees could result in lower quality products being made, which could damage HLC's reputation. This is our first justification point. And now we need to justify why demotivated employees is a greater disadvantage of the advantage of larger consumer base. So the answer says the potential of a large consumer base is eliminated as a bad reputation is likely to result in fewer consumers wanting to buy products. And this is the mark scheme. Here, again, I've used chocolate and 80 employees. This is a case study for the next question. I have used fashion and clothing for the application. Explain two methods of training ZRE might offer its employees to help them provide good customer service. Which is likely to be the best method for ZRE to use? Justify your answer. Method 1. Off-the-job training, which is our knowledge point. This will mean that the employee will have the most up-to-date knowledge on fashion. More informed employees lead to better customer service. Fashion is our application, and our direct impact of off-the-job training is that they get the most up-to-date knowledge on fashion. Method 2. On-the-job training. Knowledge point. This means that the trainer will still be working, which will not reduce their productivity selling clothes, allowing for sales to be made. The application point here is clothes, and the analysis point is a direct impact of on-the-job training, which is it will not reduce their productivity. And for the justification, our first evaluation point is to justify why off-the-job training is better. So off-the-job training is better than on-the-job training. This is because employee can focus solely on the training from a specialist, leading to less mistakes made in the shops. And then we need to justify why off-the-job training is better than on-the-job training, as on-the-job training will pass on bad habits to the trainee employee, which increases errors and reduces quality of service. This leads to bad brand image and reputation for ZRE. And this is the mark scheme, as you can see, for the application, clothing, and fashion. I hope that helped. I hope you guys have a good day. Bye-bye.